The air was dry and heavy with the scent of old stone. Darren wiped the sweat from his forehead as he made his way through the ruined city. The twin suns of the alien world, Velith, burned in the sky, casting long shadows over broken statues and crumbling pillars. His boots crunched against the dust-covered ground as he stepped carefully over fallen debris. He had traveled far, but he hadn't expected to find something like this. A city lost in time, silent and forgotten. Darren was an explorer, a human traveler seeking knowledge and adventure across the stars. He had heard whispers of this place from the Vorthai, the reptilian species that ruled this planet. They called it the Valley of the Forsaken, a cursed land where only fools dared to walk. But humans were never ones to run from a mystery, and Darren wasn't the type to ignore a challenge. As he moved deeper into the ruins, his eyes caught something strange ahead. In the center of the abandoned city stood a towering obsidian pillar, smooth and dark as night. It rose high into the sky, untouched by time, unlike the rest of the crumbling structures around it. But what truly caught his attention was the figure chained to it. A woman. She was tall and slender, her silver-blue skin gleaming in the fading sunlight. Her violet eyes flickered open as she lifted her head weakly. Strange energy chains bound her wrists, glowing faintly as they wrapped around the stone. She looked exhausted, as if she had been there for a long time. Darren felt a chill run down his spine. Who was she? Why was she left here like this? He took a cautious step closer. "Hey, can you hear me?" he called out. The alien woman stirred, her gaze meeting his. There was no fear in her eyes, only defiance. "Leave," she whispered, her voice dry and weak. "Before they see you." Darren frowned. Who will see me?" Before she could answer, a low hiss echoed through the ruins. Darren turned sharply, his hand reaching for the pulse pistol at his belt. Several Vorthai warriors emerged from the shadows, their yellow eyes glowing like embers in the dim light. They wore tattered robes, their scales dusted with sand. One of them, an older Vorthai with deep scars across his face, stepped forward. His voice was calm but firm. "You should not be here, human. This place is forbidden." Darren kept his stance relaxed but alert. "Why is she chained?" he asked, nodding toward the woman. The older Vorthai narrowed his eyes. "She is forsaken. Her crime is great, and her punishment must not be undone." Darren glanced back at the woman. She didn't look like a criminal. There were no signs of violence, no cruelty in her face, only tiredness and something else, a deep sorrow hidden behind her sharp gaze. "What did she do?" he asked. The Vorthai elder hesitated before answering. "She spoke of things that should not be spoken. She sought knowledge that was meant to be forgotten." Darren felt a familiar spark of curiosity. Knowledge. Forbidden knowledge. That was exactly the kind of thing that made humans different from many alien species. While others feared the unknown, humans chased after it. He took another step forward. "And for that, you chained her here." The elder Vorthai's expression darkened. "It is our law. This city is a grave of the past, and she tried to bring back its ghosts." Darren's fingers tightened around his pistol. The more they spoke, the less he liked this. He turned back to the woman. "What's your name?" For a moment, she said nothing. Then, slowly, she whispered, "Sarah." The way she said it, it felt like she hadn't spoken her name in years. Darren looked at the chains again. The glow in them pulsed faintly, a sign of energy-based technology. He had tools on his ship that could break them. He could free her. The Vorthai elder seemed to sense his thoughts. "Do not make this mistake, human. If you free her, she will be bound to you. That is our way. She will owe you a debt until it is repaid." Darren raised an eyebrow. "A debt?" Sarah's voice was barely a whisper, but her words were clear and strong. "If you free me, I will swear to serve you until my debt is paid." Darren stared at her. He hadn't come here looking for a fight. He hadn't planned on interfering with another species' laws, but he had seen enough to know this wasn't right. Humans had a saying, no one deserved to be chained for seeking the truth. His decision was made. He reached for the device on his belt, a multi-tool capable of disrupting energy fields. The Vorthai warriors tensed, their hands gripping their weapons. Sarah's violet eyes locked onto his. For the first time, they weren't filled with exhaustion or pain. They were filled with hope. The moment Darren activated his multi-tool, the air around the pillar crackled with energy. The glowing chains shimmered, resisting his attempt to break them. He adjusted the frequency, his fingers moving quickly over the device. Sarah remained still, watching him with sharp violet eyes. She did not plead or beg. She only waited. It was as if she had accepted her fate long ago. But now, for the first time in years, she dared to hope. The Vorthai elder stepped forward, his expression dark. "Stop this, human. You do not understand what you are doing." Darren didn't look at him. "I understand enough." A sudden pulse of energy burst from the chains, forcing him to take a step back. They resisted fiercely, as if the pillar itself was alive. Darren gritted his teeth. This wasn't going to be easy. Sarah's voice was calm, despite her weakened state. "The lock is ancient. It was made to hold those who carry forbidden knowledge. The energy will fight back." Darren smirked. Good thing humans are stubborn. He increased the output of his multi-tool, forcing the device to work harder. The energy surged again, but he held firm. The tool whined in protest, heat building up in his hand. For a brief second, the chains flickered, just a tiny weakness, but it was enough. Darren acted fast. He adjusted the frequency one last time and pushed the tool against the chains. There was a loud crack, and suddenly, the chains shattered into glowing fragments. Sarah gasped as her arms fell free. She collapsed forward, and Darren caught her before she hit the ground. She was light, almost too light, as if she had been drained of strength for far too long. The Vorthai warriors hissed in alarm, their hands moving toward their weapons. "Enough," the elder growled, holding up a hand. His gaze locked onto Sarah. "She is forsaken. She will bring ruin upon herself and you, human." Sarah, still weak, lifted her head. "You were always afraid of the truth," she whispered. The elder's face remained unreadable. "And you were always too foolish to accept silence." Darren helped Sarah to her feet. "We're leaving." The Vorthai warriors did not move to stop them. They simply watched as Darren supported Sarah, guiding her toward his ship. The elder's voice followed them. "You do not understand the weight of what you have done, human." Darren didn't answer. He didn't care. She was free now. Back on his ship, Darren placed Sarah in a chair in the medbay. She sat still, looking down at her freed wrists, as if she couldn't believe it was real. "You okay?" Darren asked, grabbing a canteen of water and handing it to her. She hesitated, then took it with both hands. She drank slowly, savoring each drop. He realized just how long she must have gone without food or water. Finally, she spoke. "You freed me." Darren shrugged. "Yeah, that's kinda what humans do." Sarah studied him for a long moment. "You do not understand what this means." He leaned against the wall. "I understand that leaving someone in chains is wrong." She looked down again. "I owe you a debt now." Darren raised an eyebrow. "That's what the elder said. What does it mean?" Sarah exhaled softly. "It is an ancient law of my people. If one is freed from the pillar of shame, they must swear an unbreakable vow to the one who freed them. I am bound to you now, until my debt is repaid." Darren frowned. "I don't need a servant." Sarah shook her head. "It is not about servitude. It is about balance. If I do not repay this debt, I will never be free. Not truly." Darren sighed. "All right. So how do we repay it?" She looked up, her violet eyes suddenly sharp. "By finishing what I started." Darren folded his arms. "And what exactly did you start?" Sarah hesitated for just a moment before speaking. "I was imprisoned because I uncovered something forbidden. Something the Vorthai do not want the world to remember." Darren's curiosity flared. What did you find? She leaned forward, her voice lower now, filled with something new. Determination. The Vorthai were not always like this. Long ago, they were not bound to one world. They had the power to travel the stars, to explore, to learn. But something happened. Something that made them forget their past. Darren's eyes narrowed. Forget. How? Sarah's hands clenched into fists. The truth was buried. The old records were sealed. Generations were raised with false knowledge. And anyone who tried to uncover it. She didn't need to finish the sentence. Darren exhaled. And you figured it out. She nodded. I found proof. I was close to understanding everything. But before I could share what I learned, they silenced me. Darren ran a hand through his hair. This was big. A civilization forced to forget its own history. That wasn't something that just happened. Someone, or something, made it happen. And now? He asked. Sarah straightened. Now I will finish what I started. I will find the truth. And you have already become a part of this. Darren chuckled. Yeah, that tends to happen when I get involved in things. Sarah looked at him seriously. You have freed me. Now I swear, I will not rest until this debt is paid. There was something powerful in her voice, a promise that carried weight, as if the universe itself had heard her words. Darren looked at her and grinned. Well then, let's go find some answers. The hum of the spaceship's engines filled the cabin as Darren guided the ship away from the ruins. Through the window, the endless sands of Velith stretched beneath them, glowing gold under the twin suns. The city of the Forsaken disappeared behind them, swallowed by time once more. Sarah sat in the co-pilot's seat, staring silently at the screen in front of her. She looked stronger than before, now that she had eaten and rested, but there was still a shadow in her eyes. Darren could tell her mind was far away, trapped in the memories of her past. He leaned back in his seat. All right, we're away from your old prison. Now how about you tell me the full story? Sarah's fingers traced the edge of the console. You will not like what you hear. Darren smirked. I have a habit of hearing things I don't like. Tell me anyway. She exhaled, closing her eyes for a moment. Then, finally, she spoke. My people were not always like this, she said. The Vorthai were once explorers, scientists, and dreamers. We built ships that could travel beyond this world. We looked to the stars, searching for knowledge. But one day, all of that disappeared. Darren frowned. Disappeared how? Sarah's violet eyes met his. No one knows. The history was erased. The records, the books, even the stories passed down through generations, all of it was wiped away. The Vorthai were left with nothing but a lie, that we had never left this planet, that we had always been bound to the sands of Velith. Darren raised an eyebrow. You're telling me someone erased an entire civilization's past? That doesn't just happen on its own. Sarah nodded. Exactly. It was done on purpose. The question is, by who and why? Darren's fingers tapped against the console thoughtfully. So how did you figure all this out? She hesitated before answering. I found pieces, broken records buried deep in forgotten ruins, hidden messages in ancient texts that no one was supposed to read. And most importantly, I found proof that our people had ships once, ships capable of traveling to the stars. Darren's interest sharpened. Ships? You mean there's still old tech left behind? Not much, Sarah admitted. Most of it was destroyed. But I found a fragment of a navigation system, one that didn't belong to anything that exists today. Darren whistled. And let me guess, when you told the Vorthai leaders about this, they didn't exactly thank you for your discovery. Her jaw tightened. They called me a liar, a threat to our people. They said I was spreading dangerous ideas. Darren shook his head. Figures. People in power don't like when someone questions their version of history. Sarah looked away. They warned me to stop. I didn't listen. So they locked me away. Darren was silent for a moment. He had seen this before. Leaders hiding knowledge, rewriting history, controlling what people could and couldn't learn. It was a story as old as time. But this was on another level. He leaned forward. All right. So if someone erased your history, that means whoever did it didn't want the fourth eye to leave this planet. That's the part I don't get. Why go through all that trouble? Sarah's expression darkened. I don't know, but I intend to find out. Darren grinned. Good. I was hoping you'd say that. Sarah gave him a curious look. You believe me so easily. Darren shrugged. I've been to a lot of planets. I've seen a lot of things that don't make sense. And I know one thing for sure. When someone tries this hard to hide the truth, it usually means the truth is really important. For the first time, Sarah smiled. Just a small, fleeting expression, but it was there. Darren turned back to the controls. All right, so where do we start? You mentioned finding pieces of the past. Got any leads? Sarah's eyes brightened slightly. There is one place, an ancient ruin buried beneath the great dunes of Velith. It is said to be the oldest structure on the planet. If there is any remaining proof of what happened to our people, it will be there. Darren nodded. Sounds like a good place to start. What's the catch? Sarah hesitated. The ruins are dangerous. The Vorthai believe they are cursed. Few who enter ever return. Darren smirked. Cursed, ha. Sounds like just another word for full of secrets. Sarah gave him a wary look. You don't understand. The place is guarded, not by people, but by something else. Darren raised an eyebrow. Something else. Sarah's voice dropped lower. They call it the Skykeepers. No one knows what they truly are, only that they exist to keep the past buried. If we go there, we will not be welcome. Darren's grin widened. Now we're talking. Let's go say hello. Sarah shook her head, but there was a flicker of amusement in her eyes. Darren set the ship's course for the Great Dunes. As the engines roared to life, he glanced at Sarah. You sure you want to do this? Sarah's gaze was steady. I have no choice. The truth was taken from my people. It's time to take it back. Darren nodded. Then let's go make history. As the ship soared into the sky, neither of them knew what awaited them in the ruins below. But one thing was certain. The past was no longer lost. It was waiting to be found. Darren's ship soared across the endless desert, its engines leaving a faint trail of heat in the cold morning air. Below, the great dunes of Velith stretched for miles, rising and falling like waves frozen in time. Somewhere beneath all that sand, an ancient ruin lay hidden, waiting to reveal the truth Sarah had spent her life searching for. Inside the cockpit, Sarah stared at the map on the screen, her violet eyes filled with focus. There, she said, pointing to a spot near the edge of the dunes. That is where the entrance should be. Darren glanced at the location. There was nothing visible, just more sand and stone. Are you sure? It looks empty. Sarah nodded. The entrance is buried. The Vorthai have always feared this place. They made sure no one could find it easily. Darren smirked. Well, lucky for us, humans don't give up easily. He gripped the controls and guided the ship lower, dust and sand swirling as they neared the surface. With a soft thud, the ship landed on the dunes. The moment the engines powered down, an eerie silence surrounded them. No wind, no sound, just the heavy stillness of forgotten time. Sarah adjusted the scarf around her neck, preparing for the desert heat, and grabbed a small scanner from the ship's storage. Darren followed her out, shielding his eyes from the bright twin suns. This place is too quiet, he muttered. Sarah knelt down, running her fingers through the sand. It is said the ruins were sealed by the ancients. No one knows what's inside. Only the stories remain. Darren crossed his arms. And what do the stories say? She looked up at him. That those who enter never return. Darren grinned. Sounds like my kind of adventure. Sarah shook her head but couldn't hide a small smile. She activated the scanner, sweeping it over the ground. A few moments later, a faint hollow reading appeared beneath them. The entrance is here, she confirmed. About 6 meters down. Darren whistled. All right, let's dig. Together, they worked quickly, using a small excavation tool from the ship to clear the sand. As the layers fell away, a metallic surface slowly emerged, an ancient hatch, its edges covered in strange symbols. Sarah's breath caught. This writing. It's not fourth eye. Darren knelt beside her, studying the markings. Then who made it? Sarah hesitated. I don't know. Darren reached for his multi-tool, activating the interface. Let's find out. He pressed a sequence of commands against the hatch. At first, nothing happened. Then, click. A low, mechanical groan echoed as the hatch slowly opened, revealing a dark passage leading deep underground. A rush of cool air drifted out, carrying the scent of old stone and metal. The passage was lined with strange glowing symbols, their dim light flickering as if they had been waiting for someone to awaken them. Sarah exhaled. We are the first to step inside in centuries. Darren grinned. Then let's make history. They descended carefully, their footsteps echoing in the narrow passage. The walls were smooth, unlike any natural cave, and the air was too clean, as if the place had been preserved by something beyond time. As they moved deeper, the glow from the symbols brightened, revealing a massive chamber ahead. Sarah gasped. This is incredible. The chamber was enormous, its ceiling stretching high above them. In the center stood a massive structure, shaped like an archway, its surface covered in the same mysterious symbols. Darren frowned. This doesn't look like ruins. This looks like... He hesitated, searching for the right word. A gateway, Sarah whispered. Darren turned to her. A gateway to where? Before she could answer, the ground beneath them rumbled. A deep mechanical hum filled the chamber. The symbols on the walls pulsed with energy. Then, a voice, ancient and distant, spoke. Intruders detected. Darren spun around. Okay, that's not a good sign. From the shadows, something moved. Tall, metallic figures stepped forward, their glowing eyes locking onto Darren and Sarah. Their bodies were smooth and silver, their movements eerily fluid, like machines that had been asleep for 1,000 years and had just awakened. Sarah's breath caught. The Skykeepers. The machines raised their arms, and a soft energy hummed at their fingertips. Darren tensed. Sarah, you got a plan. Sarah stepped forward, raising her hands in a gesture of peace. We mean no harm, she said firmly. The Skykeepers did not respond. The energy around them grew stronger. Darren's hand moved toward his multi-tool. I'm guessing they don't take visitors. Sarah looked at the gateway. I think this place was meant to be forgotten. The Skykeepers exist to make sure it stays that way. Darren exhaled. Great. So how do we convince them to let us in? Sarah's gaze darted around the chamber, searching for something, anything, that could help. Then she saw it. Near the base of the gateway, a small console pulsed with a faint golden light. She turned to Darren. We need to activate that console. I think it's the key. Darren glanced at the approaching Skykeepers. You better be right about this. Sarah took a deep breath. We have no choice. The truth is buried here, and I will not leave without it. Darren grinned. That's the spirit. As the Skykeepers closed in, he nodded to Sarah. Let's do this. The Skykeepers advanced, their glowing eyes locked onto Darren and Sarah. The hum of their energy weapons filled the air, a warning that any wrong move would not be forgiven. Darren clenched his jaw. I don't think they're here to welcome us. Sarah didn't answer. Her eyes were fixed on a console near the gateway, its golden light pulsing like a heartbeat. She knew that it held the key to everything. If we activate that console, I believe the Skykeepers will stop, she said quickly. Darren glanced at the towering machines. And if you're wrong, she exhaled. Then we don't leave this place. Darren smirked. Great. No pressure. The Skykeepers took another step forward. The air shimmered around them, charged with energy. Sarah made her decision. Cover me. Without waiting for a response, she bolted toward the console. Sarah, wait. Darren cursed and jumped into action, grabbing a small device from his belt. He pressed a button, and a flash of bright light exploded in the chamber. The Skykeepers halted, their sensors momentarily overwhelmed. Sarah reached the console, her fingers flying over the ancient symbols. She didn't know the language, but something in her blood seemed to guide her. The gateway shuddered. The symbols on its surface flared to life, shining with a brilliant blue light. A deep rumble echoed through the chamber as if something was waking up. The Skykeepers froze. Darren blinked. Sarah, what did you just do?" Sarah's breath was unsteady. I activated the gateway." A sudden wind whipped through the chamber, pulling at their clothes. The air rippled, and before them, the center of the gateway shifted, changing from solid stone to a swirling vortex of light. Sarah stared in awe. "It's a portal." Darren took a step back. "A portal to where?" Before she could answer, the Skykeepers suddenly lowered their weapons. Their glowing eyes dimmed, and they turned away, stepping back into the shadows. Sarah exhaled. "They're standing down." Darren frowned. "Why?" Sarah turned to the portal, her heart pounding. "Because we were never intruders. This place, it was meant to be found." She looked at the ancient symbols glowing around the chamber. For centuries, her people had been told not to seek the past. They were warned that doing so would bring danger and ruin. But now she realized the truth. Someone had hidden this place on purpose. Someone had wanted the Vorthai to forget who they were. Darren stepped beside her. "So, what do we do now?" Sarah met his gaze, determination shining in her violet eyes. "We go through." Darren exhaled. "Of course we do." He tightened the straps on his gear. "All right, let's find out what's on the other side." Together, they stepped forward. The swirling light enveloped them, pulling them into the unknown. And then, they were gone. The sensation was strange, as if they were floating through a tunnel made of pure energy. Time stretched and twisted around them. Then, suddenly, light. They stumbled forward, their boots landing on solid ground. The air was cool, different from the dry heat of Velith. The sky above was not the sky of their world. Sarah's breath caught. This isn't Velith. They stood in the ruins of what must have once been a great city. Towering buildings stretched into the sky, their surfaces smooth and metallic. The structures were ancient, yet somehow untouched by time. Darren turned in a slow circle. "This place, it's like nothing I've ever seen." Sarah walked forward, her fingers brushing against a wall covered in symbols. The same symbols from the ruins back home. Her heart pounded. This was a Vorthai city. Darren raised an eyebrow. "Your people built this." Sarah nodded slowly. "A long, long time ago." She turned to him, her voice barely above a whisper. "This is the truth they tried to bury." Darren exhaled. "Then we just uncovered the biggest secret in your history." Sarah placed her hand against the wall. The moment she did, the city stirred. Lights flickered on. A deep hum resonated through the ruins. Somewhere in the distance, a machine awoke. And then, a voice spoke. "Welcome home." Sarah's eyes widened. What was that? Darren reached for his multi-tool. "Something tells me we're not alone." Sarah looked around, her heart racing. The city was awakening, and someone was watching. The voice echoed through the ancient city, sending a chill down Sarah's spine. "Welcome home." Sarah turned to Darren, her breath unsteady. "Did you hear that?" Darren nodded, gripping his multi-tool tightly. "Loud and clear. And I don't think it's a recording." The city around them hummed with life. Soft lights flickered on the walls, and distant machines whirred to life. The ruins were no longer silent. Sarah took a cautious step forward. If this was once a Vorthai city, then who built it? Darren scanned the surroundings. Better question, who's still here? Before Sarah could respond, the ground beneath them shifted. A faint blue light traced the patterns of the stone floor, forming lines that stretched toward the largest building ahead, a towering structure with a wide entrance. The voice spoke again, softer this time. Enter. Darren gave Sarah a wary glance. I don't know about you, but mysterious voices inviting us inside usually don't end well. Sarah exhaled. We came here for answers. She took a deep breath and stepped forward. Let's find them. Darren sighed. Of course. He followed her into the towering structure. Inside, the air was cool and still, untouched by time. The walls were covered in holographic symbols, shifting and rearranging as if scanning their presence. A circular platform stood in the center of the chamber. As they approached, the platform lit up, revealing a holographic figure, a tall, elegant being with the unmistakable features of the Vorthai. Sarah gasped. This is impossible. The figure's glowing eyes focused on her. No, child. This is the truth. Darren crossed his arms. Okay, I'll bite. Who are you? The figure's voice was calm, ancient. I am Elian, caretaker of the last archive. You have awakened what was long buried. Sarah swallowed hard. Then tell me, what is this place? Elian studied her for a moment before speaking. This was once the heart of the Vorthai civilization, before the war. Sarah frowned. War? What war? Elian's expression darkened. The war that ended everything. The room dimmed, and the walls shifted, forming images of a once thriving world. Towering cities, ships soaring through the sky. The Vorthai, not as the scattered tribes they have become, but as a powerful spacefaring race. Sarah's eyes widened. This can't be real. Elian continued. Long ago, the Vorthai were explorers, creators, builders of great knowledge. But we were not alone. We encountered another race, one that feared what we could become. The images changed. Another species appeared, tall beings with rigid armor and sharp, piercing eyes. They saw our progress as a threat, and so they struck first. Sarah's hands clenched into fists as she watched the vision unfold. Great cities burning, ships falling from the sky, entire worlds reduced to silence. Darren exhaled. That's why your people lost their history. Someone erased it. Elian nodded. The survivors had no choice but to flee. They abandoned this place, scattered across the stars, and in time, they forgot. Sarah's mind raced. The Vorthai had always believed they were a primitive people, bound to the deserts of Velith. But now she knew the truth. She turned to Elian. Why was this city hidden? Elian's form flickered. To protect what remains. The enemy never found this place. But if they had, all would have been lost. Darren frowned. Are they still out there? Elian was silent for a moment. Then he said something that made Sarah's blood run cold. Yes, Darren muttered. Of course they are. Sarah's voice was firm. Then we must warn my people. They deserve to know who they are. Elian studied her for a long moment. You carry the fire of the Vorthai. But knowledge alone is not enough. You must be ready. The images shifted again, showing something beneath the city. Vast chambers filled with ships, technology, and weapons, untouched for centuries. Sarah inhaled sharply. You mean, my people can fight back? Elian's voice was steady. Only if they remember. Darren exhaled. Well, we didn't come all this way to leave empty-handed. Sarah turned to Elian. Show us everything. We are ready. The lights around them flared, and the city hummed with power. The past was awakening, and soon the future would change forever. The chamber trembled as the ancient systems of the city came to life. Holographic displays lit up around Sarah and Darren, showing schematics of hidden ships, technology, and knowledge long forgotten. Alien's voice echoed. The Vorthai were never meant to be lost. You must reclaim what was taken. Sarah's heart pounded. All her life, she had been told the Vorthai were weak, broken, and unworthy of their past. But now, standing here in the heart of their forgotten civilization, she knew the truth. Darren crossed his arms. So, let's say we take this information back. How do we convince your people? They've lived under false history for generations. Sarah exhaled. They believe in survival. If we show them proof, if we bring them here, they will listen. Elian raised a hand. The walls shifted, revealing the hidden passage leading downward. Then you must take what is buried below. Your people will need it. Sarah and Darren exchanged glances before stepping forward. The passage led deep beneath the city, where massive hangars lay untouched for centuries. The moment Sarah stepped in, lights flickered on, revealing rows of sleek, silver ships, their surfaces glowing with ancient energy. Darren let out a low whistle. Now that's impressive. Sarah ran her fingers along one of the ships. It responded, its systems humming to life at her touch. This technology, it recognizes me. Alien's voice came through the chamber. Because it was made for your people. The Vorthai encoded their legacy into their own bloodline. Only one of Vorthai descent can awaken these ships. Darren smirked. Well, that makes things easier. Sarah stepped back, determination burning in her eyes. This is it. With this fleet, we can show my people the truth. Darren nodded. Then let's get moving. The journey home. The return to Velith was swift. With Alien's guidance, they activated one of the ships, its ancient power cores still fully operational. The vessel soared through space like a ghost from the past, cutting through the void faster than any modern ship Sarah had ever seen. As they neared the planet, Sarah's heart raced. Once we land, we need to move quickly. If the ruling council sees this as a threat. Darren smirked. We'll make sure they listen. The ship descended, touching down near the Vorthai settlements. As soon as they stepped outside, people gathered, their eyes wide with shock. Look at that ship. Where did it come from? Sarah stepped forward, raising her voice. My people, for too long we have lived in the shadows of lies. But today, I bring you the truth. Murmurs spread through the crowd. The ruling council arrived, their faces tense. They saw the ship and knew something had changed. An elder stepped forward. Sarah, what have you done? She met his gaze. I have remembered. She activated the holograms Elian had given her, and suddenly, the history of the Vorthai played before them. The lost cities, the war, the hidden technology beneath the sands. Gasps filled the air. People stared in awe and horror as the truth unfolded. The elder's hands trembled. This cannot be. Sarah's voice was strong. It is. And now we must rise again. The people listened, their fear turning into realization. The Vorthai were not a broken race. They were survivors of something far greater. And now, they had the chance to take back their place among the stars. The elder finally nodded. Then it is time. The Vorthai, for the first time in centuries, stood together, not as scattered tribes, but as a civilization ready to rise. Darren grinned. Well, looks like we just started a new chapter in history. Sarah smiled. No, we just reclaimed what was always ours. And above them, in the sky, the stars seemed to shine brighter, welcoming the return of the forgotten people.